Hello, this is a video guide to installing an innoFADER in a Vestax Samurai mixer. I'm going to be doing the installation in the 07 variant, but the process should be very similar on all three models. Now, unfortunately, the process is slightly more involved than installing an innoFADER in a standard Vestax PMC, but no soldering is required, so it's still pretty easy overall. Also note that this mod will disable the curve pattern controls, so if you use these features, this mod might not be for you. You can, however, set a sharp or soft curve on the innoFADER itself, or install an innoadjuster if you want to be able to do this on the fly. The best innoFADER to use is the Pro 2 version, as it's the easiest to install, but the PNP2 can also be used fairly easily. The Mini Plus can also be used in a pinch, but it may require some soldering. Head to innoFADER.com and click Where to Buy to find a local dealer for any of these models. Much like all Vestax fader replacement, we start by removing the faceplate, which means we first need to remove the 7 knobs in the lower mixer section. Then 4 screws take the faceplate off and we have access to the 3 faders. The crossfader is removed using the 2 outer screws and should be unplugged from its cable before storing somewhere safe. Now, unfortunately, we can't connect the innoFADER straight to this cable. The cables we need are buried inside the mixer, for which we'll need to remove the lower part of the enclosure. This is done on this mixer by removing half a dozen screws, 4 on the bottom and 1 each on the left and right sides of the mixer, and then the U-shaped lower enclosure lifts right off. The cables we're interested in are attached to this board here, so we need to remove this board to get access to them. 4 screws achieve this. The 2 cables we're interested in are this 4-pin one and this 2-pin one. Unplug them from the board and then screw the board back in. We don't need access to it anymore. The 4-pin cable basically works like the fader connector in a normal Vestax mixer, but there's a problem. Right now there are 3 wires going to it, 1 ground wire and 2 VCA wires. Here I've coloured in the ground wire in green and the VCA wire in violet. Normal Vestax mixers have the VCA wires in the middle of the connector and the ground and power supply wires on the outsides, but as you can see the Samurai has a VCA wire where the power supply wire should be. That's easily fixed though. All we have to do is move the VCA wire to the middle. This can be done by gently pushing down on the latch of its metal crimp terminal using a sharp object, in my case a multimeter probe, or you could use the flathead screwdriver included with the innoFADER. This allows the terminal to be removed and inserted into the correct hole in the connector. If you find that the terminal won't stay put in its new hole, you can gently bend the latch back up using the blade of a knife, but be very careful not to break it. Now we just have to add a power connection, which we can steal from the 2-pin connector we unplugged earlier. The power wire is the red one, and it goes into where the VCA wire used to be on the outside hole of the connector. The terminal is removed and inserted just like before. It's probably a good idea to tape or cable tie the loose black wire somewhere so that it doesn't rattle around or short against anything. Now you can reassemble the mixer, but just make sure the newly modified connector is somewhere near the crossfader slot when you do. Now to connect the innoFADER. If you're using the Pro 2 version, it couldn't be simpler. You just plug the mixer cable into adapter board number 8, that's the one for the Vestax 08, and then plug the innoFADER into that. The PNP2 and Mini Plus are connected via their included 4-pin large cables and require you to do a polarity test before you do anything else. These innoFADERs come in test mode from the factory, but if you've used them on another mixer previously, you'll need to put it back into test mode. On the PNP2, this is accomplished by moving this jumper to the rightmost pins, and on the Mini Plus, you move this tiny switch to the lower position. Now connect the 4-pin large cable between the fader and the mixer, and turn the mixer on. If the red light comes on, turn off the mixer, connect the 4-pin large cable into the mixer cable the other way round, and turn the mixer back on again. If the green light comes on, turn the mixer off again and you're okay to proceed. In the PNP2's case, by moving the jumper to the leftmost pins, and in the Mini Plus's case, by moving the switch to the uppermost position. Now, since the curve control switches on the top of the mixer no longer do anything, we'll need to set the curve another way. By default, innoFADERs come with an X-shaped curve, and we'll need to set it up to have a Y-shaped curve. On the Pro 2, this is done by using a Phillips screwdriver to turn the leftmost trim pot to 10 o'clock and the middle one to 2 o'clock, then holding down the calibrate button and turning the mixer on. Then you wait a second or two and release the calibrate button. On the PNP2, you start with the mixer on and the fader in the middle. Now hold down the calibrate button and move the fader to the right and then back to the middle, then release the calibrate button. Now you can use the middle trim pot on the Pro 2 or PNP2 to set the curve as sharp or soft as you like. Most people will want to set the curve to be as sharp as possible, and that's done by turning this middle trim pot all the way to the right. If you prefer a softer curve, try turning it more towards the middle, or even further to the left if you want it to behave more like the second curve pattern on the Samurai's pattern select switches. You can also adjust the 2 cut trim pots, which are used to increase or decrease the amount of dead space or lag at the edge of the fader. It's probably best to start at the suggested 3 o'clock position and go up or down from there depending on your preference. You can power up the mixer to test your settings, but be sure to power it off again before installing the fader proper. To get a sharp curve at full volume from the Mini Plus, we'll have to set the curve to sharp on the mixer's dormant curve control. To do this, we'll have to remove the circuit board at the front of the mixer and move these 2 wire links to the other position. Or just do what I did and remove the links entirely, then bridge the other 2 pads on the other side of the circuit board with some solder. Once you have the curve and lag adjusted to your preference, it's time to install the innoFADER into the mixer. First, the fader has to be attached to a mounting plate. You can either use the one from the original Vestax fader or the one included with the innoFADER. If you're using the Mini Plus, you'll probably want to use the included hex spacers to lower the height of the fader, as it has a much longer stem than the original fader. But either way, you then use two countersink M3 screws to attach the fader to the plate. Now you just screw the plate into the mixer using the two screws you hopefully saved when you removed the original Samurai fader. At least on the Pro 2 and PNP 2, the orientation is important. You want the front of the fader, that is the side with the writing on it, facing towards the front of the mixer. If you don't do this, the metal tape on the rear of the fader could short against the front circuit board, potentially damaging something. The Mini Plus can go in either way, but if you want the hamster switch to work the way you'd expect, you want the side reading A+ facing towards the front of the mixer, with the innoFADER logo facing towards the rear. Now all that needs to be done is to replace and screw in the faceplate, attach all the knobs, and of course stick the included innoFADER sticker somewhere prominent. We're finished! Thanks very much to Elliot from Audio Innovate for sending these faders to test and for helping with the installation. If you want to find out more about the Vestax Samurai range of mixers, then I've made a very detailed video about them, so check that out. Thanks for watching and stay safe!